Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Life, the Complete Story. As always, I am your host, Tyler, joined by my lovely co-host, Alex.
Hello, everybody.
And today we are going to be going over our second grouping of the worms. So last week we covered Nematoda, which is the round worms. Today we're going to be covering Platyhelminthes. Kind of as basic. I wouldn't say it's more basic or more advanced than the roundworms. They're both they have their quirks.
Yeah.
As we'll talk about
They're
today.
both fairly basic. Yeah. I would say the Platyhelminthes are a little more basic than the roundworms, but not by a lot. Like
In
it's not a
terms of body
significant
structure.
difference.
Yeah,
Yeah,
in terms
it's
of
not
body
a
structure, I'd say.
significant difference. Yeah,
But
like as always,
we start with our nature in the news. Alex, would you like to cover this week's nature in the news?
Yeah, actually, this week I've seen this in a handful of places. So this is actually really cool. So this is from nature.com. It's an article I've seen it around. It's an orangutan, or Sumatran orangutan actually heals itself or uses plants, like a medicinal plant, to heal itself. It had like a cut on its face, and it applied
an herb, like a poultice.
Like a poultice to the cut on its face to speed the healing process. Using it so this is the first instance we have of a wild animal applying some sort of medical or some sort of medicine to itself.
There's instances that we've seen in studies where animals are able to use plants or something around it to do things. There's records of rats using different plants to like fumigate insects out of their dens, but this is the first time we're seeing an actual wild animal use a quote unquote medicine to its fullest potential.
Yeah. So the orangutan, it's in Sumatra. They found he's about 24 years old, I think was the same. He was about he's older than that now. He was 20 back in 2009, so he should be in his mid-30s by now, roughly.
Mid-30s, early 40s. He was when they first met him. He was a younger male.
Correct.
Male orangutans when they get to like their full maturity, like how silverback gorillas are. Male orangutans get these big. They're called phalanges, I think, or something like that.
Yeah, big cheek pads is
black
what they're called.
cheek pads. Yeah. But he had this deep wound, like an open flesh wound, on his cheek pad that he was able to use as medicine. This herb. Article says what herb it is. Can you pull up the article, Alex?
It is the it's Racus is the name of what they had named the orangutan, which means greedy in Indonesian, coming off of a story where he ate all of the flowers off of a flowering bush in one go.
Yes. This is a picture of the orangutan.
Yeah, so that picture is after. Sometime later, there's a picture a little bit lower on. So,
this is what he looked like initially.
Any sensitive viewers, you can see the wound on his face, and he was seen eating the stems and leaves of a creeper, Akar kuning. Scientific name Fiberia tinctoria, which is used by the locals to treat diseases like diabetes, dysentery, malaria, among a number of things. But it's something that the orangutans really don't eat, or very rarely. But they saw him chewing the leaves of it, but then instead of swallowing, he actually used his fingers, took some of the juice out of, made from his spit, and chewing it, kind of released the juices within the leaves, and smeared it on the facial wounds like a poultice. And then over the next few days, he did that again. And then after about a week, the wound had closed up, completely.
Yeah, and as you can see in that first picture, you can see where the wound was, right under that right eye, and you can see the scar tissue forming mode.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
So it's something that it's the first time they've ever seen an animal, as they say here. No other orangutans were seen doing this. So this is the very first time they've seen a wild animal like self-medicate, is what they would call it.
yeah, they've seen it in other species, as it says in the next paragraph down. Some geese can swallow leaves to get rid of tape, like worms. Rats line their nests with plants to get rid of parasites, and some chimps in Africa have been seen to rub insects on their wounds to potentially heal them. I don't understand how that one works. I don't.
Yeah, I'm not
The other
sure.
two make sense.
Yeah, but this is the first time like it was seen like specifically like there was more than just okay. They knew that like these certain leaves or whatever, or these like plants that are real that have a very strong smell that insects or parasites don't like. Um, this is a step beyond that because it purposefully chewed up the leaves and spit it out and applied it to the wound. Like this is beyond just that the natural like eating the plant
Right.
kind of thing or using the aroma of the plant. A little
And
more
the importance to
advanced.
this, in the grand scheme of things, the importance to this is that orangutans and humans share a very common ancestor. Um,
Yeah,
so if you find the missing links here, you can kind of see that humans have developed cognitively based, like, yeah, we have a more developed cognitive functions than some of these other animals, but our early ancestors probably learned how to do these things from other animals, like observing it in
yeah,
the wild, and
yeah,
we didn't just wake up one day and say, like, you know, this medicine stuff's pretty cool, and
yeah.
these plants
Yeah,
do that
I
and
mean,
that.
same idea how we learned. Yeah, same idea how we learned how some things were edible, like the coconut. I'm sure they would have watched the coconut crab, which has really big claws, strong
Yeah.
enough to crack and open up coconuts and it eats the meat on the insides. I mean, think a big hard thing. Would you automatically think, oh, this is something I can try to break open and eat? Probably not, especially if it's something you haven't seen before. But then you see something else eating it a certain way, they're breaking it open, eating the insides. Like, oh, maybe I'll try that.
Um, that's all I have on this article. Do you have anything else to add, Alex?
I do not. It's very cool the fact that this is an incredibly new uh, development that seems to be very popular uh, in social media as far as uh,
Yeah, I've seen this pop up quite a
nature
few
social media
times within the
as have I.
past 3 or 4 days. I don't want to say 3 or 4 days, but at least today I've seen it 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, last
And
couple
I saw
days.
I saw it through Instagram, and then I'm like, yep, this is what we're
Mhm.
talking about today.
Yeah, yeah. So it's super cool. Absolutely, very
Um,
interesting. Something.
so that'll move us on to
And,
our lesson for today. And then, as we said
yes,
earlier, we're going to be
sir.
talking about platyhelminths, or
Yeah.
flatworms. Flatworms are the most primitive life form that is both bilaterally symmetrical, which means it is the same on the left and right side of its body, as well as a triploblast. So, for those of you that don't know, a triploblast means that it has three cell layers: the endoderm, the mesoderm, and the ectoderm,
Uh,
epiderm,
epiderm. Yeah.
epiderm. Right.
Yeah. So yeah, and that's different from a lot of the organisms we've been talking about, or at least before we got to the worms being more simple. They really only had like the mesoderm was just kind of just a collection of cells. It wasn't a distinct layer that was separated. And a lot of times the mesoderm is like another membrane that surrounds like the internal organs. At least in a more developed organisms, it's the membrane that surrounds the organs on top of the actual organ tissue itself. There's like another membrane around it, and that's something that is distinct to the more advanced animal species and animal groupings.
Right. So, as we said, platyhelminths are bilateral, triploblasts, but they also they only have one orifice, so they only have the mouth. The mouth acts as their mouth and their anus, so everything they eat that gets put in their gut cavity comes back out that same hole. And the
Correct.
reason that they are... Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that becomes a problem we'll talk about later as we get to the parasitic flatworms.
Right. And the reason flatworms are so flat is because they have no organs per se, or no specialized cells, which
Just
we'll
have
get
the
into
gut.
later on down the line, because they do some really cool stuff. But that being said, they get their oxygen through diffusion, so that's why they're flat, because no one cell can be too far from its center.
Correct. Yeah, and that's pretty much all of these organisms are aquatic or live in some sort of water somehow. Is not
They're
something.
either aquatic or they are parasitic.
Correct.
So previously we had these classified into 3 separate groups. The Turbellaria, which is the free living flatworms. This is the most famous flatworm. This is the Planarians. They look funny, I will say. Well, I will show a better image. This top right here, that's a Planarian, but that's not exactly a great image of one. There's plenty of other images that we can use. The trematodes are the flukes, which are a type of flatworm. They're all parasitic, and they have a long life cycle. Not a long, but a complex life cycle in terms of parasites. And these first 2 groups are paraphyletic, so they have most of the descendants come from the same ancestor. There's monophyletic, paraphyletic, and polyphyletic, which means that polyphyletic means that everything comes from a different ancestor, but have kind of converged into the same few species.
Yes.
Paraphyletic is this some but not all, and monophyletic means that it came from the same ancestor. Like every single species in that taxon came from a single ancestor.
Yeah, or at least a very similar ancestor. Yeah, so put that in perspective. Things like we talked about the orangutan, all primates came from a relatively similar primate ancestor.
Right. And
However,
we're not sure what this common ancestor is for these flatworms, because most of these invertebrates, as we talk about, hard to find fossils for at least these next few sessions that we have, these next few weeks we're going to talk about, because they are nearly entirely all soft body. There is no hard parts. Like once we get to arthropods, they all have that hard exoskeleton. Like crustaceans, insects, arachnids, they all have that hard exoskeleton made of protein. And echinoderms have a hard substance, like a hard structure too. And then
makes it easier to fossilize. Yeah.
And obviously all chordates have a backbone and some type of bone structure that makes it easy to fossilize too. But the final grouping in the flatworms is the Cestota, which is specifically tapeworms or other intestinal parasites. As I said, there's no fossil record. A few trace fossils have been reported that were probably made by Platyhelminthes, and we found some fossilized fluke eggs.
Yeah, and it was in the dung of
the ground sloth,
ancient organisms,
of megatheriums,
yeah.
And our fossil record comes not from actual organismal evidence, but through marks on other species saying, oh, well, this is what happens whenever a modern day fluke or modern day tapeworm infests a host. And we're seeing similar patterns in fossilized mollusks, maybe. So that's how, like, it's kind of like that evidence through proxy, if that makes sense, right, Alex?
Yeah.
Right. You have anything else to add on flatworms while I pull up another article?
Not off the top of my head. Yeah, I was just trying to find stuff as well, so we can get a little deeper into the groupings of the flatworms. Like we said, our major groups, at least like our traditional style groups, you have Turbellaria, and then there's Trematoda, Digenea.
The three main ones that we
Yeah.
have are Turbellaria, Trematode, and Cestota. We'll just stick to those three
Yes. Yeah. Sorry.
for this week.
Yeah. I've been. I was trying to look through here as the things keep changing. Sorry. Trematode, and then there's a Cercomeromorpha. Digenea falls under Trematode, I believe.
I believe you're right.
Yeah. So, like we said, our Turbellarians, our vast majority of them are free living flatworms. A lot of them, not all of them, are marine flatworms. There are actually some that are terrestrial species, so they can live outside of the water, but they tend to stay in very moist environments like leaf litter or rotting wood. Some are symbiotic with other organisms. There are a couple
So that means,
parasitic ones.
so symbiosis, for those that don't know, means that there is some type of interspecies relationship. Parasitism is a relationship where the one benefits, obviously the parasite benefits from a host, and the host is oftentimes harmed through this.
Mm-hmm.
There is, what is it called? Mutualism, where both species have some type of benefit. So there's, like the oxpeckers. That's not the
Yeah.
right one. No, they don't have mutual benefit, do they? Oh, yeah, they do. So like if oxpecker you find on a rhino, the oxpecker eats the birds and other pests off the rhino, so it gets a full belly, and in return, the rhino gets, parasite-free lifestyle.
Yeah,
Clean.
it gets all those bugs and everything that are crawling on it are gone.
I'm forgetting the other one, but basically what it sums down to is, um, one organism receives a benefit and there is no effect on the other. So this could be like sea anemones and clownfish, as we covered in Nidaria. The sea anemones oftentimes have some type of organism that lives within them as a shelter. They are unaffected by the stingers, their stinging cells, as we talked about. They're not affected at all. Like, it's not like they're eaten by this clownfish, but they offer a safe space for the clownfish when it is under duress of predators.
So, yeah, as far as the Turbellarian, a lot of these, like we said, the marine flatworms, they tend to be very brightly colored. They're a little bit more developed than the other groups, just because they're mostly free living. So they actually have like their mouth has sort of a pharynx, like the kind of a very simple, what would be considered like the throat, kind of to help push food further into the body. Lined with cilia, like I said, kind of sweeps the food or small prey
Yeah, it's a
more
very
into
primitive pharynx.
into the gut. Yeah, more into the gut. Some of them do have actually. There are some that are even more developed that actually have a muscular pharynx with like little hooks or teeth that help actually like grab prey. These are some of the predatory flatworms. And then
Right. Most
they
flatworms, Alex said the predatory ones. So that most flatworms therefore are either detritivores and they eat just leftover gunk on the ground.
yeah.
But those predatory ones have developed so that they are able to quickly take in their prey and not have it struggle too much.
Correct. Yeah. Some of them actually have little, what we consider like kind of little tiny eyes. They're not true eyes, of course. They're more like light sensory organs that
Yeah.
help them kind of orient themselves up and down to the light. And as well, some actually have statocysts, which are like little fluid chambers that, similar to how the middle of the ear in most mammals at least, kind of helps you. There's three little like semicircle rings that help you orient. Is how you balance. Similar idea where like that fluid, as it moves and rotates, it helps the worm balance itself.
Here's what a planarian looks like. One of the
Yeah.
more simple flatworm species. As you can see, those two black dots are the eye spots that we talked about. Not really eyes, but more light sensors that Alex was referring to. It's kind of
Yeah.
oriented on its stomach side, if you want to say.
Yeah. 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 And some of the a lot of the planarians, if not all of them, have actually been shown that if you cut them, like say if you cut it in half or however, they'll actually regrow, even to the point where like the part of the body that if you cut it like right behind its head there, it would actually grow a new head and become a new organism. So there's some chemical growth control that is actually they've been studying.
Right.
To
And part of that has to do with the
understand
fact
that. It's very
that,
interesting.
sorry, didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, you're
part
good.
of that
I
has
was just wrapping up.
part of that has to do with the fact that they don't have specialized tissues really. They're just that triploblastic acoelomate type thing. So all the cells do basically the same thing. So if you chop part of it off, the cells will just mitosis it up.
Yeah, and pretty much all Turbellarians are hermaphroditic, which means they can produce both male and female reproductive cells. So both sperm and egg, and they actually fight with each other to in some of the larger species. Yeah, it's dubbed penis fencing is the name of this kind of I don't even know what to call it, like a just like
A
a
genitalia joust.
for yeah, it's a
You asked.
yeah, that's how they choose who's going to be the male and female is pretty much the best way to put it. It's kind of a competition of it's a dominance competition is what
the winner
is.
gets to pass on their, I assume, sperm.
Yes.
Right? Where the loser has to take it and gets their eggs fertilized and has to deal with that process of laying fertilized eggs.
Yeah. Yeah, and actually, this is fairly unique. Is I know a lot of the species, when the eggs hatch, they actually emerge as like just very small adult planarians or turbellarians. Wow,
there's
there
no
are a couple
larval
species
stage.
that produce little like. No, there are a couple, especially in the larger species, that produce like a plankton-like larvae, where it's a very small, tiny little organism that then grows up into the full-size flatworm. Kind of goes through a change. So next would be the group Trematoda, which is one of the groups of the parasitic flatworms. Correct.
Yeah, the fluke. Very primitive looking, very small. Not very small.
Or at least,
most species are small because they have to fit.
Some can be like fairly large.
Yeah, this is kind of similar to last week how we talked about in roundworms. Like, if there's a species, there's probably a parasitic roundworm for it. If there's a species, there's probably also a parasitic fluke. And some of them span
or
multiple
other sort
species.
of flatworm.
Yeah, tapeworm / flukeworm.
Yeah.
And some of them are non-species specific. So like they're more organ specific, like liver flukes and blood flukes, right?
Lung flukes.
Blood flukes. Lung flukes.
Blood flukes, yeah, I believe so. Yeah, intestine, lung, blood vessels, livers. Yeah.
Right.
So, so for a little bit of like parasite kind of anatomy development process, I guess like a little lesson on parasites. A lot of times they'll have like an intermediate host and a definitive host, which means that you'll have like two, they actually call them like generations of the parasite. So your intermediate host is usually where your adults lay the eggs, and the eggs are ingested or however are attached to the intermediate host, which then grows up, it hatches and grows into like a larval stage and is then released by the host. So I will pull up this image here, make it a little easier to see.
Yeah, please do. For our video.
So you have for our video listeners or viewers.
Where we got step 1 here.
So step one would be like right around here. So you have your eggs that then are eaten in the case of this flatworm, which
This
is the
specific fluke.
Metacercariae, I believe.
Which is
So
like a
the
stomach
eggs
fluke.
are ingested by the. It looks like it. Ingested by the snail, emerge from the eggs, and they penetrate the snail's small intestine, which they are then released by the snail. So this is this is like the larval stage here, and then the larval stage penetrates the skin of freshwater, brackish water fish, and then they create like cysts within the muscle tissue of the fish, which is then ingested by either animals or even humans. When you don't cook it enough to kill those the cysts that are made around the larvae, and then those cysts are then eaten and embed in the small intestine or in the large intestine or wherever they're at, which then grow into the adults, which then produce
Produce more eggs and then start the cycle again.
yes. Yeah, they produce more eggs. As the adults mate or asexual reproduction, however they reproduce, which then produces more eggs, repeating the cycle. So that's kind of an idea of how parasites work, and this is where when we say intermediate versus definitive host. In this case, the definitive host is going to be your humans or your
Your fish
mammals and
eating.
birds that would eat. Correct, because that is where the adult organism exists. Like the mature organism is whatever this little worm here. So in the case of, believe it is in this group, is the flatworm or the tapeworm falls under this group. That is how the tapeworm
Right. Tapeworms are a
acts,
separate
and that's
grouping of flatworms, but they follow the same premises in their parasitic host cycles. And a species can
correct. Yeah,
have as many intermediate hosts as it needs, but
but
typically
there's
stay
usually
to
only
one definitive host. Just
or
because,
one type. Yeah,
yeah, the snail has the eggs inside of it, and they turn into larvae in the snail. But the snail going to the definitive host is not possible per se, or less likely to occur.
correct. Yeah. So in the case we showed, the snail and the fish are both like intermediate hosts, while the large vertebrate mammals or birds are your definitive host. So yeah. So
Are there any
that's where
major differences between Trematoda and Cestoda? So Trematoda is the flukes, and Cestoda is the tapeworms. Are there any major differences between the two, or is it fairly similar in
yeah,
a
they're actually
parasitic lifestyle?
as far as like the life cycle, they're similar, but they're very different in the sense of they're actually like almost different classes. I think is how they're classifying these. Um, they are they've changed as we so as far as the classes within Platyhelminthes, they said Turbellaria, Trematoda, and then we have Monogenea and Cestoda are classes. So I think one or two of those I talked about might have been subphyla. Like Trematoda. Trematoda is a class. What was I saying? The Circomeromorpha is, I think, a subphylum. But so those are your traditional classes of Platyhelminthes, but there's actually now two phylogenetic, so they're more based on genetics as well as structure, function, form, like the anatomy of the flatworms. So there's now two classes. I don't know if they're two new classes or if they're two different classes, or like they're reclassed. There's Catanulida and Rhabdidophora.
Those are both
Which I believe,
tapeworm
yeah,
classes?
they are both flatworms, but they are not tapeworms. Tapeworms fall into the
Cestoda.
class Cestoda. Correct.
Okay.
So,
So
the trematodes are the flukes, which it refers to the cavities and what is called like the holdfasts on their bodies, which they are like little suckers on the head of the flatworm they use to anchor themselves. And then as well, something that's unique is the skin of this is all a single. They all have a single external membrane called a syncytium, I believe is how you pronounce that, or symplasm.
Symplasm.
Yeah, so it's like a very thin layer that allows them to intake nutrients from the host. And yeah, so we were talking about before that it was the two groups within Trematodes, the Digenea and Apsidogastria. That's just, I believe, different classifications of what they infect. So Digenea is like your flukes, which are like your blood flukes, intestinal flukes, liver flukes, typically of a single sex. So they there are some that have okay, this is the group that has the grooves where they have females. So there's some that are females that actually have a long groove that along the body where no, sorry, the males have the groove. I apologize. The males have a long groove along their body that some small, like real skinny females will live within the groove, only leaving to lay eggs. And even that's only partially leaving the male to lay eggs, and then they continue. They kind of almost are parasitic of the male in
So
a
it's
way.
kind of like an anglerfish, where the
Correct.
flip-flop on the genders, where an anglerfish,
Correct.
the female is that large football-shaped fish with the antenna on top for bioluminescence, but the male is this tiny little cyst that sticks on. And I believe we've talked about it on the podcast before, but for those of you who are just
Yeah, I
tuning in,
believe we have. Yeah,
right?
and they
Okay.
can actually they're very small though, 0.2 to up to 6 millimeters in length. So that's less than 1/10 of an inch to up to about 1/4 inch in length for adults in the Digeneans. And then Apsidogastria, the other grouping within Trematoda, those are more, they infest the guts of fish, turtles, and marine and freshwater bivalves. So those are your like clams, and then gastropods, which are snails. But they are. I think that's why they're a little different. They either have like a single divided row of suckers, or single divided sucker. So it's like one sucker that's split, or just a row on the underside. So they're a little different than Digenea. And then,
Awesome.
of course, Cestota, which is like the real big group, which is where the tapeworms live. This is the last grouping here of our flatworms, I believe. Yes.
Awesome. So what's so special about Cestota here? Like, what do they got going on? I know that they're tapeworms. They typically infest warm-blooded hosts.
So they're very similar to the flukes in the sense of how they attach. They have more pronounced kind of like head shapes that have suckers that have little hooks on them, which is how they attach to. In the sense of tapeworms, a lot of times it's the gut of some sort of warm-blooded host, and that's what Cestota in Latin. Cestus means tape, so Cestota is how they get the name tapeworm. Similar thing, they really don't have mouths or guts. They have that very thin symplasm skin that they absorb nutrients through the host, which in the case of the intestinal tapeworm, in the small intestine, it absorbs it similarly to how our intestines absorb those nutrients. It just passes it through the skin into the body, with which it then feeds its own body cells. But what is interesting is they'll actually disguise themselves chemically to avoid attacks from the host immune system. So they'll actually produce chemicals to either mask themselves or kind of mirror the host body to stay alive without being attacked by the immune system. And then when they, as they grow, they get longer, they actually produce like small segments. They are called proglottids. So this process is called strobulation, where they actually These segments, as they grow longer, they grow more of these segments, and then usually the end segments, they'll actually kind of divide and break off, and that becomes like a little pouch that the eggs live in. So each segment will have a ton of eggs in them. So it says the most mature of those proglottids are the farthest from what's called the scolex, which is where the head is, like that head with the suckers and hooks. So of course it grows kind of from where that head is outwards, and those segments mature as they get longer. So they'll get anywhere. They start out incredibly small, like we said, that kind of larval stage, but they can get up to. They've seen them up over 20 meters, about 66 feet long in humans. This is the tapeworm, Taenia saginata, is this specific species, but typically about 4 meters or 13 feet, which is still quite a large organism to be living within your body. And there's a whole lot of different ones that infect different
the whale tapeworms
different
can grow over
organisms.
100 feet.
Yeah,
Well,
correct.
you got to think that it all depends on what their host is and how much
correct.
intestine they can grow into. So, like, obviously, I mean, a human having a 13-foot creature in your intestines is baffling because there's only so much intestines to go around. But just imagining a 100-foot tapeworm inside of a whale is crazy to think of.
Yeah. So a lot of times with the tapeworms, what happens is they grow within the muscle tissue. Their larvae are within the muscle tissue of some sort of organism. Either some that, like fish tapeworms, they'll use what are called copepods. They're small crustaceans that are the intermediate hosts. The larvae are eaten by the copepod, which it then embeds itself, and then the copepod is eaten by fish. It embeds itself in the fish's gut, then repeats the cycle. Similarly, for the ones that infect like humans or other mammals, usually, specifically the one we talked about that infects humans, the eggs are ingested by like cattle or pork, pigs. So like your red meat animals per se, which then of course they make those little cysts within the meat. If it's undercooked, human eats it, tapeworm leaves that cyst, embeds itself in the intestines, and then repeats the cycle. So this is why a lot of times on farms they say not to go to the bathroom in fields, especially like cattle fields, because those different those chances of getting tapeworm, now especially if you don't know you have a tapeworm, it can definitely lead to problems, but they can be passed from other organisms, not just humans.
Right.
So that is all I have for
I'll talk about.
platyhelminths. I apologize.
That's what they came here to do.
Got a
They came
little
to learn.
long-winded there.
They came here to
Yeah.
learn.
So
Don't
we
worry.
got a little in-depth. Yeah, they're just kind of funky organisms, so it makes it easy to talk a while about them, especially being
Right.
parasitic. Something that these are some of especially these and the roundworms are like the first human parasites that we've talked about, or they have human parasites, but especially the flatworms are big, something you hear a lot about. So you'll hear us as we get more in depth, get these more advanced organisms, we'll go more in depth with each of them.
Right. And there's one final grouping of nematode now. Platyhelminthes I'd like to talk about. They're the monogeneans. They don't affect us as much. They live specifically in fish, mostly in the gill structures of the fish, and they do not have intermediate hosts or definitive hosts. They just have the definitive host. So basically, the whole it'll go into its adult stage, lay its eggs, and those eggs will hatch all within the same fish. And they infest the gills of these fish along with fins and skin. And there's not much to talk about in them. They're really small, rarely longer than an inch, and they really don't have any special like systems or anything like that in terms of like circulatory or nervous systems like that.
Yeah.
Just a quick little tidbit into a final grouping to round it out.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. So, yeah, real quick, I just wanted to show a couple pictures. So these are our Turbellarians. These are like your marine flatworms. As we said, they can be very colorful like this. Some of the more terrestrial species tend to be darker, like browns and blacks. They hide better.
mm-hmm.
So these ones, they're very colorful. And then if I want to go to tapeworms, let me pull up just a regular picture here of the tapeworm.
I don't know if we mentioned it before, but tapeworms have hooks in their mouth region
Yeah,
similar to the trematodas, the flukes, so they
correct.
can latch on.
Yeah, so I'll just share this. So for our group, you can see here how some of the tapeworms go. This looks like a scanning electron microscope, like a really small. It can show really small what some of these images look like. As you can see, this is what we said, those suckers and the hooks on the top. These are kind of freaky looking. This is how they attach into the intestines on the tapeworms. And then the flukes, they tend to be very much smaller like this. This is that I talked about, that groove.
That the females tend to live in.
This larger one would be the male, and this smaller, skinnier one is the female. So the flukes are a little different. They kind of look like little teardrop shapes, like this, much smaller. Not nowhere near as long, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But they're still parasitic, cause a lot of problems.
All right, that's going to conclude our lesson. Unless Alex has anything else to add.
I think I've beaten that horse quite enough. I've beaten that dead horse.
Well, I will let you continue to have the mic as you will lead us into our not amazing species. That's my job. Our most wanted for the week. You chose to pick something quite topical. We've talked about this.
Last couple weeks I've been trying to be a little more topical. So this week for our invasive species is the hammerhead flatworm. So these are Turbellarians.
Nasty.
They can be very nasty, yeah. So specifically, this is the Bipalum coense. Yeah, Bipalum coense is the species. It's a terrestrial flatworm. It's has a half moon shaped head. They're brown. They can get up to 15 inches long, but they're real long and skinny. They are predators for earthworms, so it would be like our segmented worms, which I think would be next week, actually.
Yeah, that'll be our
Maybe.
final worm grouping we talk about.
So they eat a lot of those as well. They can carry parasitic nematodes, which they then can spread to other native organisms. But they secrete chemicals through their skin that make them noxious to different predators. But they aid in their digestion of the regular earthworms. They cause skin irritation, or they can cause skin irritation if they are handled or consumed by domestic mammals like pets. Biggest issue is that because they eat all the earthworms out of forests, crops, gardens, things like that, earthworms are major players in detritus removal because they introduce a lot of air into the soil, which is super helpful for plants because it allows air to get to the roots, as well as they give channels for water to kind of soak into the soil more readily, especially in your harder soils. And then because they eat detritus, they help compost the things like leaf litter over time, which without them, it would just build up and our soils would be very poor in nutrients. So these flatworms eating the earthworms is a big problem, especially if it's a long, like they've been there for a long time. They've been infesting them for a long time. They were first kind of found in greenhouses in the very early 1900s, like 1901 actually. Most likely brought in on exotic plants that were used to kind of make
Like
what's the word
ornamentals
I'm
and
looking
stuff.
for? Yes, ornamental. That was the word I'm looking for. Now they're typically in more like hot, humid, like tropical, subtropical environments. So this is why they're mostly in the southern parts of the United States. However, they have been seen in greenhouses in Massachusetts, Michigan, New Jersey, New York, and Ohio. So some more northern states. Now these are just in greenhouses. These are not in like natural outdoor habitats. However, they may have seen some possible temporary populations in Massachusetts and New Hampshire, which those two are most likely they escaped from greenhouses.
Right.
So now, fortunately, they really don't resemble any native species, so not something that you're gonna have to worry about like accidentally killing a native. But if you
Yeah,
do
if you
see
see
these, there's
one,
actually
you'll know you see it.
and so the
It's a
best way to
flatworm
get
with
rid of
this.
these,
It's got that kind of head.
yeah, yeah, in a second here, I will pull up a picture, but there's another invasive flatworm, different species that is in Texas that looks similar. So it's another invasive. So if you're killing that one as well, not a big deal. But they actually be killed with salt and actually orange essence or citrus oil, because since they have very thin skin, like most other flatworms, it will dry them out very quickly. And then they can also be sprayed with vinegar and salt or salt directly. The best way to do it is if you can get them into like a Ziploc bag, like a plastic sealable bag filled with salt and or vinegar, or that like salt and citrus oil vinegar. The acidity of the citrus oil and vinegar and the salt will dry them out. But the best way is to get them into that bag so they can't crawl away and maybe survive. But as we said, those chemicals that they produce do irritate the skin. So you should use either like gloves, especially particularly or preferably disposable gloves that you can take off and get rid of once you're done handling them. A couple paper towels like stacked together, or if you use like a stick to get it into the bag very gently. And then best way to do, in any case, wash your hands afterwards with warm soapy water. Get those chemicals off you, especially because you don't want to like touch your eyes and get that irritating chemical into your eyes. So real quick, I will pull up here
While he does that, I will kind of say that fire does
image.
work too, but it's not advised because there are a
You
multitude
don't
of
want to
risks
start.
that. Yeah, you
Yeah,
don't want to start a forest fire by trying to get rid of one worm.
correct. Yeah. So here's what those flatworms. This looks like a model, but this is what they kind of look like. Let me see if I can find a better image. I mean, the image of the model is pretty good.
Yeah, it's pretty spot on. I will say that
Yeah,
a lot of these invasive species we've been covering, Alex, none of them look
yeah.
pretty. So there's like it's
No, they're kind of ugly looking. So this is that specific invasive species we talked about today. Kind of has these stripes running down it. So you see, that's the picture I found. These are you can see that hammerhead shape. There are other ones that look similar colors. These are some of your more tropical ones, but yeah, definitely if you see these, you need to exterminate them because they are
get
a
that
very
vinegar
bad
spray bottle.
invasive. Exactly. So finally, we are on to our last segment of the day is our amazing species, which Tyler can take it away for. I
Right.
think I've talked enough today.
Before you click on anything, Alex, I will tell you what the species is called, and I want you to tell me where you think it belongs on the phylogenetic tree. A little mini game, if you will. Today's amazing species
I
is
I might have
mountain.
already.
You son of a gun! And we're
I
talking about the
I you
mountain chicken.
I Yeah, I
For
beat you
viewers at
to it. It
home,
is a
please,
frog.
please, yeah, it's a frog. The mountain chicken is a frog, and I'm sure there's probably a bird called a frog or something similar. Yeah, I bet there's a toad bird. Don't worry, we flip-flop here,
Yeah,
just like birds, reptiles.
exactly.
Right. So, mountain chicken is a frog, Leptodactylus phalanx. It is critically endangered, last assessed in August of 2017 with a global scope of assessment. It also has a green list status, which is kind of like recovery efforts. So it is critically depleted.
Mhm.
I haven't really done much in the green list. I've done a lot of research and stuff on red
Yeah,
list things. The green list is kind of
yeah,
new in terms of recovery efforts.
okay. Yeah, it's something I haven't
So
really heard of before.
yeah, so it's a similar
Not in good
scale.
shape.
You know, you go least concerned to critically endangered to eventually extinct. So this green status
Mhm.
goes from fully recovered, meaning that it went from wherever it was on the endangered species list and is now at a sustainable population that we no longer have to have it on the list through conservation. If it
Mhm.
naturally does it, it's not really on the green list, but through human intervention and human efforts to bring it back. Right. So it was assessed for its endangered listing in 2017. It scored a critically endangered. It says that uh, monthly monitoring has been in Dominica. That's where it's from, obviously, Dominica, and a couple islands in the Caribbean, I believe. Yes.
Yeah. Yes, like Guadalupe, that
Yeah, it's
area.
on the island of Dominica, not in the Dominican Republic.
So I think that is part of the Bahamas, or very close. I don't know if it's very
No,
close to the
it's its own
Bahamas, I
island.
believe. Okay,
No.
it's just part of that kind of
Yeah,
island chain with like
it's
Saint
part
Lucia,
of
Barbados, yeah,
yeah, the greater
Antigua,
whatever they're
yeah.
called. So they've been doing monthly monitoring since 2014. They believe there is an estimated population of 132 as of 2017. The population crashed in 2002-ish. Was not detected at all during the 2006 to 2010 surveying period. Where am I at here? Oh, there was initially a count of 4 in 2011. That was eventually reduced to 2 individuals. So it's
Oh,
still critically endangered. We're going from 2 species up to whatever we have today. I'm sure I'll get into that whenever I talk about the green listing. It has crossed that 80% threshold category that we've been talking about weekly in these critically endangered. Is if a species has an 80% decrease in population size within 3 generations, it is considered critically endangered.
and that gets it to that point where you start getting that genetic. There's not enough
Yeah,
genetic diversity to sustain it.
yeah, you'll have a bottleneck that leads to inbreeding and eventually genetic defects that cause extinction. But we're fixing it. We're slowly fixing it. It is that critically depleted on the green list because the majority of the islands that it once inhabited, it is now extinct on those islands. So globally, it is critically endangered. It is threatened on the island of Dominica. So experiencing a higher success rate on that island compared to other islands. Uh, um, and its extinction factor. You'll never guess, Alex, what pushed this one to the
Uh,
brink.
uh, I'm gonna guess it is the chytrid fungus,
It is the
like
chytrid
many
fungus.
other
Oh,
tropical amphibians.
yeah, chytrid's nasty. Actually,
It
we
is.
and Alex talked about this last week with what did we say it was? A fungus or a virus that's starting to be modified
Oh
to.
yes,
Should have
it's like
posted.
a virus that infects the chytrid fungus. Yeah, it's something we should have saved for a.
It's okay.
Um,
We have backup plans. You find
yes,
you can find the article on our Facebook page after this episode airs, and that's where you can read about it. I'm not going to go into it in depth here because we're not running low on time, but we've been pushing this
been going
episode.
for a while. Yeah,
But I will talk about it in a Facebook post sometime after this episode airs, but before the next episode airs. Yeah. So without human intervention, the mountain chicken would be extinct. No doubt about it.
absolutely.
Yeah. So right now it has two extant regions, so it's living on two islands, Dominica and Montserrat, and it has gone extinct in Guadeloupe, Martinique, and St. Kitts and Nevis. That's its range. Prefers sea level to 430 meters. We're looking at a mature population right now of 132 in severely fragmented locations. Obviously, it's an island species, so fragmentation occurs from island to island, giving you that island rule. So if the species continues to survive and continues to thrive, I would not be surprised if the Montserrat species becomes genetically unique in comparison to the Dominica species. There are 7 spatial units on these islands we mentioned to kind of bring back that population to its former glory on all of these islands. Terrestrial habitat with a generation of 3 years. So a lot shorter than a lot of the other species we've been talking about. So they're saying that within a 10-year period, we've lost 80% of this population. That's why they're critically endangered, since that generation is 3 years. If I'm
Yeah,
doing
that's
the
pretty
math right.
long for an amphibian.
And we're saying that years ago, there was easily hundreds of thousands of mountain chickens in the area, especially in Dominica. We had up to 36,000 individuals being harvested per year. I don't know what we're harvesting for. I'm assuming for, I don't want to assume, but I'm
If
assuming
they're edible,
if they're
looks
edible,
like it
correct.
looks like they might have. Yeah, they might have been eaten.
We eat frog legs here in the U.S., specifically bullfrogs, because they're the largest.
Yeah, yeah. It
frog
says if you
species.
go down to the use and trade section of the red list, it says it was used widely and heavily as a food substance on those islands, but since
Yeah, it has been
there were
removed.
hunting bans placed, yeah, but
Yeah, it was the national dish of Dominica. I don't know if you said that
yeah,
yet, but
yeah,
and then once you
I
kind
had
of go
not.
down to 2 species, you have to change that because
Yeah, when it gets
not a good
becomes
look.
critically endangered, it's not great.
Right.
Yeah.
And usual culprits in terms of threats, we got, logging, housing,
Yeah,
tourism,
these are
hunting.
forest dwelling frogs, so
Yeah.
a lot of
A
yeah.
unique occurrence though is volcanoes, because we're in that not quite that ring of fire in the Pacific, but I mean it's still in that tropical area. That volcanoes are natural occurrences globally, so
Yeah,
being under constant threat of an active volcano does not do you
doesn't
much
help.
good. No.
Especially something that can't move all that fast.
Yeah. Give me 1 second, and I will pull up an image.
This way that the viewers can see our frog.
Yes.
So for those who are just listening, it is kind of like think of your typical frog, but is a kind of coppery, greenish
It's kind of a
brown.
copper brown on the belly area with a more
Yeah,
brownish hue on that backside and head region.
yeah, and the legs are kind of stripy. I'm guessing the picture on the Red List website's either a younger organism, like a more like juvenile, because it's
Mhm.
more red with more pronounced stripes on the legs, on the lower legs.
Yeah, or a male
That is possible as well. I don't know if they show
using that
some
kind
sexual
of
dimorphism or not.
sexual dimorphism. This image is from the St. Louis Zoo, so I'd assume that they have a small population there that they might be.
It's possible. It's very
Yeah,
possible.
and obviously the name mountain chicken comes from their humongous size. These things can reach up to 2 pounds, which is massive for
Yeah,
an
they're
amphibian.
hefty. Yeah, it can measure as long as 8 inches. So these are very large frogs.
Yeah, both like bullfrog sized.
Yeah, yeah. This is their a similar sized frog to the American bullfrog.
Right. That's really all I have this week to cover on the mountain chicken, Lepidactylus falix. So as always, we want to thank you guys for listening. Make sure, if you haven't already, follow us on Spotify, give us a like, and subscribe on YouTube. Make sure to ring the notification bell so you can get notified whenever our episodes drop every Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Follow us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, like our posts. It helps us out a lot. We know who's engaged, who's listening, what you guys like to see versus what new things we can post there. As we mentioned, look forward to that chytrid fungus post.
Yeah, we usually share some different articles and things if we find something really interesting that didn't quite make the cut for this week's episode, or just something in the middle of the week that we just think we really need to share. We will.
Yeah, we
share
typically try to get an article out that doesn't either doesn't quite make it onto our show, or that we find interesting throughout the week but doesn't fit with what we're talking about per se.
Yeah.
And we always try to share an amazing species sometime throughout the week on our Instagram page. Because there's so many species that no matter how long the show goes on for, we're not going to cover them all.
No, especially if you start with all the amphibians around the world and everything. There's a lot of endangered species, unfortunately, but that in some cases it's the way of life. And then, of course, we also have sometimes we post some kind of just different content from our typical podcast-related content. So always something to look out for.
Last week we posted about a trip Alex and I went on to Cook Forest, where we, enjoyed the woods, enjoyed time with family and friends, but more importantly, got out into nature, saw some cool things that you don't typically see.
Yeah, especially Cook's Forest. For those who don't know, it's a state park in Pennsylvania. It's a lot of old growth forest. I think they have a specific area of the park. We didn't get to visit it, but a specific area of the park that is very old growth. Some very large trees. Very impressive area. Very cool visit.
And there is talk of us going back relatively soon. Hopefully we can
try to go visit the park more. Yeah,
go visit the park, get some exclusive footage for you guys, only available on YouTube. Hopefully, do not quote me.
Hopefully, it would be nice.
One last thing before we wrap up is the addition of a new segment within the next 2 months, because I realize that arthropod is going to take us a month and a half at least.
Yeah,
or not really.
Most likely it's going to take us a while.
Where we will be highlighting, we're going to call it From the Vault, and it will kind of be a look back in time.
Like a little bit of a fossil record.
The fossil record deep dive. Which, honestly, we were going to start when we got to the chordates and the vertebrates and things. But we can start it in arthropods. There's a lot of...
Yeah, yeah.
Or we can even start... Yeah, if we can start at mollusca, arthropoda. Really, once we finish worms.
So, once we start getting to things that have more solid structure that can fossilize. We'll be there.
But that's going to bring us to an end for this week's episode. As always, thank you for listening, and keep
Thank you for watching, and learn something new.